Welcome to B2B Marketing Spotlight. I'm Lee Odden, CEO of TopRank Marketing, and today I have with me the amazing Jay Baer. Yes, thank you, Jay. So let me tell you a little bit about Jay. Jay is a seventh-generation entrepreneur. He's written 6 best-selling books, and he's founded 5, not 4, but 5 multi-million-dollar companies. He is the president of Convince and Convert, a consulting firm that works with the most distinct small businesses and iconic brands to gain and keep more customers. Jay is a recent inductee into the Professional Speaking Hall of Fame. And I didn't know this. Well, I did know about the tequila. He's an avid tequila collector, and this I did not know, a certified barbecue judge. Wow.
True.
This is good stuff. So I've known you, Jay, for about 10 years. I looked it up.
Yeah.
And we first connected on LinkedIn in like March 2009. So,
man, and here we are. We're still doing it. Do you feel happy about that, or do you feel like we have somehow not been able to get off the merry-go-round yet?
Well, you've gotten off the merry-go-round 5 times already. I haven't done it yet. So I don't know. I think one of us is addicted and one of us is just
just working hard. I understand.
Working hard. Thank you so much for that save. So what's going on in the world of Jay Baer these days? What's new? What's exciting?
A bunch of stuff, more like personal stuff than business this year. We moved last month to where I currently am, a lake house on a lake. So really excited to sort of be in the woods a little bit, and one flight of stairs and you're on the boat. That's been great, and a smaller house and easier to take care of. We did that because our youngest is going to university here in a few weeks, so we will be empty nesters. So a big different kind of life stage for my wife and I, and hopefully she'll be able to travel with me a little bit more. Maybe you can even meet her at one of these conferences one of these days, because usually she never comes with me. So we're excited about all those things. And on the company side, we're doing great work for great clients, and blessed every day to be able to do so.
Fantastic. So the kind of work we're often doing is in the B2B world, of course, and I'm kind of feeling like B2B marketing's alphabet soup these days, ABM, MQL, CRM, TOFU, MOFU, BOFU, and all the things.
Do you like some abbreviations? I feel like it's like the military or medicine, right? It's like the three industries that like abbreviations the most: military, medicine, and B2B marketing.
Exactly. So, I'm wondering if you have some advice or some insights on how marketers are finding some signal out amongst all that noise and confusion. What are they doing to get focused?
Man, I don't know that they are, frankly. I guess what I would advise, and I don't want to name check my own stuff, but I will. I just feel like you got to kind of go back to the utility principle, right? Which is let's set aside all the shenanigans and just say, okay, look, what do these prospective customers need? And how can we give that to them? And if we do that consistently, eventually we're going to win. And ultimately, that's the only great truism of marketing, right? Like, give people what they need and eventually you will win. The problem is there's lots of ways to overcomplicate that. And frankly, in B2B, I think you probably do too, Lee, there's not enough patience, right? I mean, B2B marketers, and I think it's partially CMOs and CEOs as well, they're like, how many leads did we get today? And it's like, bro, like, let's think about this from a longer perspective. People aren't like, hey, LinkedIn post, here's $1 million for a software package. Like, there is actually a consideration period here. I've been doing some consulting with B2B companies that have, last click attribution on social. Like, okay, so you're telling me that your software company is going to try and sell software off a tweet? Like, that ain't going to happen, right? No wonder you think your social media doesn't work. So ultimately, I feel like there's not enough patience in the game, and the culture around B2B is becoming a culture of instant performance, and that is not going to work.
Yeah, I wonder if it's part of the consumerization that's been applied.
I think you nailed it. Yeah. I think you nailed it, right? It's hey, everything happens really fast B2C, so we should do that too. And but look, buying licorice ain't the same as buying a software package.
It's not marketing spend, it's marketing investment. Come on.
That's it.
So, we've been to our share of B2B marketing conferences this year, and
yes.
I think we both noticed that there's a lot of emphasis on customer centricity and customer experience, but that's really not enough, is it?
It's not enough, although it's a lot. I feel like if you have a truly differentiated customer experience, that will absolutely allow your marketing to work harder and smarter. The reality is that in B2B, very few organizations have a differentiated customer experience. They may try and improve their customer experience from a competency perspective, right? And say, let's just upset fewer people, which is great. That reduces churn, but it doesn't necessarily increase new customers, right? And so let's think about this. There's two types of customer experience, okay? There's customer experience that's rooted in competency, and there's customer experience that's rooted in conversation, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Competency, right, keeps your customers. Conversations gets you new customers. Right now, when people say customer experience, what they really mean is customer service in a lot of ways, right? It's churn reduction. And that's important, but that's a different thing, right? That doesn't have as much of a tie to marketing. The other issue right now, Lee, is that customer experience and CX, the whole field, is such an emerging field and almost buzzword status. But the problem is, if I say to you, hey, let's improve your CX, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Because isn't everything in your company part of the customer experience? I mean, everything from the website to how you answer the phone to what do the invoices look like to how many minutes does somebody have to wait on hold. A customer experience is how you make customers feel. And that's a lot of different things. And so what I find, and I speak at a lot of CX conferences, is the problem is we say customer experience like it's a thing. And it's an infinite collection of things. And so I think the better way to look at it is how can we be faster, or how can we be more relevant, right? Or how can we be more empathetic? Like break CX down into component parts, then you can actually do something about it.
Yeah. Well, tell me, so coming up in a couple of months here is the MarketingProfs B2B Forum.
Woo! B2B Forum. I haven't been to they haven't invited me back for a while, so I'm super pumped. I think I was barred at some point, but I've statute of limitations has expired, and I've been invited back, which I'm thrilled to grace the stage with you, my friend.
Oh, well, so, and you're doing an opening keynote on turn your customers into volunteer marketers, and
yes.
Talking about employee advocacy. So I'm curious, in the context of this notion of creating great customer experiences and being more relevant, faster, and all that, what role does employee advocacy play in all of that?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, if you have a truly differentiated customer experience, something that creates conversations, your employees will naturally echo that and amplify it, right? And kind of connect the dots for potential customers. They will be part of the marketing arsenal. The problem with employee advocacy, and I'm sure you see this day to day in your work, is that it's so funny. Like when people at a company in marketing or even HR, because sometimes they get involved in advocacy programs too, when they're starting to stitch the program together, they like completely forget like what it's like to be a customer. It's like this weird amnesia effect sits in, and they're like, oh, so they're not just going to like tweet out this thing that says this company is the greatest company in history. And it's like, no, bro, you wouldn't do that either. Like, why would you think, like, it's so nakedly promotional, right? It's like a commercial, and nobody's going to put that on their personal social media. And that's the thing, right? And they're just trying to turn employees into shills, and nobody's down with that. So it's just got, again, we seem to have lost all subtlety in B2B marketing, and it's driving me crazy. I think I need to write an ebook about that.
Well, I think I've learned a new J. Baerism, and that is nakedly promotional.
Yes, nakedly promotional, the best kind of promotional.
So obviously there's a lot that goes into an employee advocacy program. I'm wondering what role, well, here, I'll ask this question first. Where should B2B brands start in terms of how to organize more purposeful word of mouth marketing? Is this something you can pilot, or should you come out of the gates both guns blazing?
Yeah, I mean, for word of mouth, you should absolutely pilot it. In fact, when we develop word of mouth strategies for clients, or talk triggers, as we call them in our world, we always test it, because even though we do a tremendous amount of research to identify potential differentiators, you don't really know till you know, right? And so the way we do it is when we're hired to create a strategy, we'll come up with like 12 ideas-ish, and then we'll narrow those down to 5 or 6. So we kind of put through a viability filter with the client. And then we'll come up with 3 that we're like, yep, everybody would be happy if we did this. Everybody's down with it, right? But then we take 1 and we actually test it. And we say, all right, let's roll out this CX initiative to either every nth customer, or only customers in a certain market, or only customers of a certain product, some way that we can segment it, right? So we've got people who have experienced this customer experience initiative versus the control. And then we actually measure the talkability of it to see if customers are actually noticing it and telling the story. And if they are, then you roll it out across the enterprise. But you got to do that testing thing, right? Because if you're just like, hey, this would be fun, let's roll this out. Well, if you're wrong, nobody will ever trust you to come up with a word of mouth idea in your company ever again, right? So you got to use, unfortunately, you have to use math.
Yeah. Well, it's a little more sophisticated than the spontaneous, shiny object chasing activities that are so common in so many companies.
Yes, indeed.
So what are some examples, or what is an example of, great employee advocacy and action from a B2B brand?
You know what's one I love is you probably know Uber Conference, right? So you know those guys, they do free conference calls on the internet, VoIP style. Look, there's probably, I don't know the actual number, but there's 8, 10, 12 companies that do the same thing, like literally the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, you couldn't slide a sheet of paper between their product offerings. But Uber Conference succeeds, because they're competent, but competency doesn't stand out. Nobody talks about competency because they expect it. Like nobody ever says, hey, let me tell you about this perfectly adequate experience I just had, right? There's no story there. It's just no story there, right? It's not a story worth telling. So yes, they're competent, but that's table stakes, but they're differentiated. And the one thing that all conference call services have is on-hold music. Now, as you know, Lee, most on-hold music is incredibly perfunctory, mundane. It's how Kenny G stays in business, I think, on the royalties. But Uber Conference decided to do it totally different. So Uber Conference, when you're on hold, has a truly hilarious song that plays when you're on hold. Now, that song was actually written and performed by their CEO, Alex Cornell, who was a musician in addition to being the co-founder of Uber Conference. And because it was like made by their CEO, all the employees are super into it, right? So they're always sharing the song with their friends. They're always talking about it in social. They mention it to every customer. And it is such an incredibly successful word of mouth idea and a talk trigger and a differentiator. If you just go to Twitter and search Uber Conference plus on hold, like you'll see tweet after tweet after tweet after tweet after tweet, or people saying like, I didn't want the call to end, or I hung up early so I could listen to it longer, like, all these things. I'll show a couple examples, I'm sure, on stage at the forum. It's amazing, right? And they just took something that's usually lame and they made it better, and people talk about it. And it gives their employees something to rally around, and it gives their customers which is the most important thing. Like, you have to give people a story to tell.
It's funny. It makes me think of an expression I've used a few times, and that is that if they care, they'll share.
Yes, I love that.
When you create that experience, there's an emotional connection to that, right? And
especially because it's unexpected, right? So people like to share stories, and they notice things that are outside their normal frame of reference, right? So that's why I wear plaid suits as opposed to normal suits, right? That's why the funny on-hold music stands out, right? If it was just on-hold music with a really good saxophone riff, like nobody would really, it wouldn't be different enough, right? It would be better, but it wouldn't be different. And as Sally Hogshead has famously said, different is better than better. And there's a lot of truth to that.
So what role does technology play in this kind of initiative, right? Obviously, technology and scaling anything in marketing kind of go hand in hand, but what are some of the things companies should be thinking about from a tech standpoint or a MarTech standpoint when it comes to employee advocacy?
Lots of different things. Obviously, there's a number of different platforms out there for employee advocacy that you can choose from, and I think they're all reasonably adept. I'd be looking for a couple of things. One, the ability to test, right? To be able to segment and create different groups of employees and say, okay, this is the test group, this is the control, this is sales, this is marketing. I think most of them can do that. Obviously, security is incredibly important. I think scoreboarding and results and gamification, right? You have to give people a sense of where they are in the universe. And then when we're doing a lot of testing around word of mouth initiatives, we're always, not always, but typically tying the measurement into some kind of customer satisfaction survey, which is oftentimes delivered by some sort of technology solution or third-party vendor, right? So the way it works, Lee, is like, so you'll be a customer and you'll get your customer sat survey, 2 weeks later, 30 days later, whatever the deal is, right? And it'll say, okay, blah, blah, blah. And then we'll add 3 questions to the survey, right? So we'll say, since you bought this widget, have you told anybody about your experiences with us? Yes or no? If yes, what did you say? Just open-ended text box, right? So what we're looking for is unprompted mention of the differentiator. On hold music was hilarious. Then the third question is, did you mention any of these things? And we give them a pick list of 5 or 7 attributes. And one of those attributes is the talk trigger, because then we're looking for an aided mention of that differentiator, right? So the pick list might be, it was inexpensive, it was easy onboarding, invoicing was simple, music on hold was hilarious, right? Whatever. And so that's kind of how we measure inherent talkability of word of mouth programs. And usually that requires some sort of software or technology solution to do those kind of analyses.
Well, great. You gave me a 2-for-1 there, because you talked both about technology and some measures of success.
Hey,
thank you. It kind of makes me wonder, they have this attitude that everyone's influential about something, especially employees. And, I wonder, is there an intersection between employee advocacy and user-generated content? Is there a content?
Sure. Yeah. We call it EGC, employee-generated content. Yeah. I think it's huge. And look, it's so much of brand content that works is kind of behind the scenes, right? Like, let's just show you how plumbing works, and like, wow, that's pretty cool, right? So who better to create that kind of BTS content than employees, right? They live it every day. So the key is unlocking their ability to generate EGC, helping them figure it out along the way, right? And then making sure that the quality is good enough that you can distribute it from a branded account. I mean, I'll tell you what, if I could wave my magic wand and live in a world where all employees were good at taking pictures on their iPhone, man, the world would be a lot better. But the reality is a lot of people have really interesting things that happen during their day, and they're just terrible at taking photos, right? You're like, we were working with a utility company recently, and they had some really interesting EGC initiatives around, here's a guy putting in a telephone pole or whatever, right? Or they had to rescue a cat out of a tree, and they were going to use the utility pole bucket guy to save the cat because the fire department couldn't get there on time or whatever. I don't remember the exact circumstances, but it was a great story, right? And then they sent in the photos. We're like, bro, come on, no. You don't shoot into the sun. You just have you just have a kind of looks like a cat smudge in the corner, and I'm like, come on, man. So that's where you're like, man, we need to have a widespread training program on iPhone photography for all employees.
So with B2B Forum, right? So what are you looking, other than the return, just like Jay Baer, the return to B2B
return?
Forum?
Yes.
What are you looking more forward to most?
I'm just, what I love about it is that B2B gets a bad rap, right? For doing things that are pretty prosaic and just kind of blocking and tackling and not thinking outside the box, which is a bad cliche, but I think it fits here. And one of the great things about Forum is it showcases, B2B marketers who are not falling into that trap, right? Who are doing some really interesting, innovative, exciting, cool things. And I'm certainly going to bring some of those stories to the table as well. And so I'm just fired up to find more good examples of people doing cool stuff. That's what I like the best in those kind of settings.
Awesome. And speaking of love, I'm wondering, what's one thing you love most about our dear friend and Handley, Chief Content Officer of MarketingProfs?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really like anything about her, frankly. No, she's one of my favorite people. She is incredibly successful, but also one of the most genuine and kind people I know, despite her her massive success, which is extraordinary. But I'll tell you the one thing that I will reference that doesn't get enough talk about Ann Handley is that as the crazy suit guy, I really appreciate Ann's pant game. Right? She's really started over the last 2 years, especially. I see her on Instagram. She's really starting to lean into the crazy pants routine, and A, I feel like she stole my bit, but B, I do appreciate that she's going for it on the pants. So I may have to find some pants for Ann as a B2B forum gift. We'll see.
Yeah, some sort of pants.
Pants.
There's some play on words there. Any special projects or events you'd like to share? Things that are coming up that are recent or coming up?
Projects or events. A couple things that would be interesting possibly for some participants here. My team and I at Convince and Convert have just put out in the last couple of months 2 big research reports. One ranking the top 50 websites for major universities in the U.S. Based on a bunch of different dimensions of website excellence. So if you're in higher ed, grab that. That's a really interesting report. And then just today, we released a new book on the top social media programs for American hospitals, reprising our 2019 or 2018 research. So all new set of data points. So if you're in a healthcare, another great report that you might want to download and peruse.
Super. Great content marketing, walking the talk.
There you go, baby.
All right. Well, thanks, Jay. Remember, everyone, you can see Jay present Turn Your Customers into Volunteer Marketers October 16th as the opening keynote at MarketingProfs B2B Forum in Washington, D.C. And I have to say, Jay is one of the best speakers in the world, literally.
Thank you.
And to bring that expertise and performance and professionalism to a marketing context is, especially a B2B conference, is something you seriously can't miss. So I'll have links to things that we've made reference to in our talk here in the notes. Thank you, Jay, and I'm looking forward to see you in DC.